Yeah. My.
Happy August, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Office 365 Hours. And today, I'm so excited I get to spend time with wonderful friends and also very smart people as we talk about how can Power Platform help my day to get job done. Why are you shaking your head, Keith?
None of us are smart, Ducks. None of us are smart. We all just stumbled across this thing because none of us could learn to program properly.
All right.
Well, with the exception of Shane. I mean, Shane knows PowerShell, so you know.
So just to get going here, let's do some quick round of intros. So Mary, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everybody what you do, where you're from, and how you're making this world a better place.
All right. Well, my name is Mary Thompson. I live in Columbia, South Carolina. I work for Cooper Perry IT, and I work with Business Central. I guess my way of making the world a better place is just trying to share the Power Platform with other people. Especially, I've been trying to work with single moms or single parents and help them kind of delve into new career opportunities because we know how beneficial that can be. So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing outside of my daily job.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. All right, Keith, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Keith Watling. I work for a consultancy in the UK called Quantic, where I head up Power Apps and all that kind of wonderful stuff. You may have seen me as a Power Apps champ, where I used to drive a bus and make Power Apps and all that kind of thing. That's a whole other story.
So wait, when you say drive a bus, can you
drive a bus? Yeah.
Like a real bus?
Yeah, big red one.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, one of those ones. So that's me. I'm the one of the original archetypal citizen developers, the people who the IT manager likes to say no to, and I terrify them on a daily basis. Now I'm spending a lot of time. I'm taking a community day to day. And I'm helping a bunch of people, a charity called Black Minds Matter in the UK, take a bunch of young children, or I say young children, I mean they're 20, but they seem like ridiculously young to me because I'm old now, and helping them on board with Power Platform on a training school that a wonderful lady called Trish Sinclair has put together, a month-long training school to help upskill people and take them and make them Power Platform experts. So I'm really stoked today, man. I'm having a great day.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Shane, your turn.
Hey, Ducks. So my name is Shane Young. I am, the giant talking head of Power Apps, I feel like. So I have a company called Power Apps 911. I got my friend Chewy here, who is kind of my cohort in all my videos. I got a couple of kids, but YouTube frowns on you talking about your kids on videos. So I decided that Chewy would kind of become my muse. So Chewy does all the fun things in the videos. Very jealous of Keith and Mary with all their community contributions and all the fun things that they get to do. But I guess I kind of look at it. So I don't work with a specific charity like they do. What I've tried to do is I try to make lots and lots of content and try to educate kind of at a mass level. So I'm not as focused as either one of them. I've tried to just do more of, let me make lots of content and then hopefully empower people like Keith and Mary to go out and then go and actually help, people one-on-one in those types of upskilling scenarios. So very exciting to hear about all the work you two are doing with that. That's very cool. So
it's amazing, and there's a whole lot of other folks out there doing the same thing, and it's just a really, while it's a terrible time we're in, but it's also heartwarming to see how everybody's doing everything they can to help each other. All right, so speaking of helping each other, let's do a quick overview of what Power Platform is. We've got our friends watching on LinkedIn. We've got some friends joining here on Teams as well. We'll take your questions. We have colleagues on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube Live. We're all over. So again, I encourage everybody to join Office 365 Hours, any platform you so choose. But let's go ahead and do a quick overview of Power Platform, and then we'll hit on some of the topics and questions we have. So what's Microsoft Power Platform? So some of you may have heard of this. Some of you, this may be the first time. This is what's called a low-code platform that spans across Microsoft Office 365, Azure Dynamics, and standalone applications. So Keith alluded to this. The idea of low code doesn't necessarily mean it's anything less. It's not good. But the idea is you don't have to code as much. The idea is anybody can be a developer, hence the term citizen developer. And not only for people that aren't coders, even coders can take advantage of it, because you can rapidly deploy solutions in a very, very quick turnaround. And Power Platform is comprised of 4 key technologies. One is Power BI. Power BI, most of us are familiar, but again, for those not familiar, it allows you to create powerful graphical reports and images from a wide variety of data sources, not just Microsoft data sources. So you can pull in any type of data and create these rich reports. And Power BI provides that way to analyze these data. Where Power Apps comes in, it allows you to act on the data, meaning you can build quickly apps across different industries, making for different solutions. And when I say quickly build apps, all I have to do is log into Power Apps, drag and drop interface. There are connectors available, templates available. You can build apps for the phone. In fact, another great story from UK as well is Samit Saini. He built an app for Heathrow Airport, and his background was he was a security officer for 12 years, right? So it really empowers people to build solutions through, again, Power Apps. The third pillar is Power Automate. So Power Automate, think of it as it allows you to automate things primarily and on anything that revolves around process. No human interaction is necessary. So for example, you could do things like, okay, when I get an email from Keith and it's Keith, make sure you forward that email to Shane, right? So that's kind of what Power Automate does. And you could even connect it to other stuff. If the weather today is, I don't know, 89 degrees, text me to do something, right? So you can automate all these things through Power Automate. And then last but not the least, Power Virtual Agent is a really cool offering. It allows you to easily create a bot and embed it on your website with just a few clicks. Again, no coding required. Now, beneath this, as you can see in this PowerPoint, there are data connectors. You can tap into Microsoft's AI Builder and also the common data service that cuts across the Microsoft Cloud. I know there's a lot to this, but this is really exciting, and it provides not only tons of ways to build solutions, but as you've heard from Keith, Shane, and Mary, it provides opportunities for a lot of people, especially today, where technology is a great enabler and it's a great equalizer as well for everyone. All right. So with that, let me just jump right into some of our conversation topics here. Let's go ahead and start with Shane here. So Shane, I know you've been in this industry for a while. You've worked a lot in SharePoint. You worked on PowerShell. What got you into this, and what are some of the low-hanging fruits that you can advise folks so they can use Power Platform for their day-to-day work?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's great, right? I love your explanation of just kind of telling the story and bringing it all together. That's the hardest part for everyone, right? Is the Power Platform is so big and so overwhelming. It's easy to be scared and be like, I could never learn all that. So how would I jump in? And so what I did was I jumped in with Power Apps. I'm like, all right, I'm going to become Power Apps super nerd. And by doing that, it then just naturally, oh, look, here's where Power Automate bolts in. Here's where Power BI bolts in. And so I've grown by, kind of starting with a focus of one of them. And for me, a lot of it was really about, I was never a developer. So all those years of SharePoint that you and I did together, I was an infrastructure nerd. I was a guy that, connect the wires, make the servers talk to each other. But I could never write code. I never wrote a line of C# code. I never could figure out what the heck the object model was. And everybody, oh yeah, just go do this. I'm like, yeah. And so when the Power Platform showed up and all of a sudden it was like, hey, you can just drag and drop and build an app to do this stuff. That was really when the light bulb came on for me. Like, this is pretty powerful. This is pretty exciting. And so I just quit everything. I quit SharePoint. I quit PowerShell. I was like, all right, I'm going to go make a bet on this Power Apps thing and see what it does. When it kind of comes to, jumping in and where to start, there's 2 different ways that I think that people should consider starting. Probably the easiest is if you've got a process today that is spreadsheet driven, right? You take a spreadsheet, you email it around, everyone fills it out, and you get them all back, and you have to kind of correlate the data, and then you go do something with it. That is a great process to turn into a Power App. Because one of the biggest challenges is a lot of people say, oh, I want to get into Power Apps, and they have their eye on the prize of like this multi-step crazy process that, none of us on this call could even just go and sit down and build in the afternoon, right? And they're like, hey, I'm going to start there. And that just never ends well for people. You can't automate something that doesn't follow a business process. So like today, if your process of getting podcast, people is very manual, right? You kind of DM'd me, you emailed Keith, you probably called Mary, so you're like, oh, there's a process, but it's kind of this ad hoc way that you go through it. That's a really hard thing to turn into an app. But I bet the process for publishing this thing or for getting approval to publish it is a very rigid process. Find a rigid process and make your first app around that so you don't have to reinvent the wheel on the way.
And we're guilty of this as techies, right? Almost always we want to build the next spaceship to go to the moon.
Yes.
But then there's these low-hanging fruits. Like for me, I got started with, frankly, Power Automate or Microsoft Flow at that time. Because internally, like you said, we had all these processes. We had a request form where some of my colleagues had to request for marketing assets. And then that request was a Microsoft form, and it just saved to an Excel. It sat there, and I had to keep looking at it. I go, okay, how can I automate this? So depending on who's making the request, the type of request they're doing, then Power Automate would just automatically create a task list, assign it to the right people. And I got started there. And soon after that, then I saw Power Apps. And the other, like, what got me with Power Apps is the ability to build apps on the phone. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's with Flow, my first Flow was same as you, it was Flow back in the day. But I get these emails. So people go to our website, they fill out our contact form, and all we do is we get an email. Right? Our website's on a cheap little platform. We don't get a database or anything. So I was getting these emails, boom, 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 boom. I wrote a flow that just responds to those emails and politely says, hey, you want to join my mailing list? I went from 7 people in that mailing list, no kidding, 7 people, to there are thousands of people now, all because I just politely asked. They send me an email. I politely ask via Flow, do you want to get added? When they click the button, the Flow triggers, adds them to MailChimp. Everyone's happy. I'm not a developer. I wrote that in an afternoon. It's pretty cool.
You use Flow to be a spam machine, huh?
I mean, if you can. But
all right, so Keith, how about you? When you got started, you talked about at one point you literally drove a bus, and then somehow you transitioned into this career.
So I was
Power Platform involved?
It wasn't initially, mate. No, I was the Excel nightmare. So I'd got a job controlling the buses where I sat behind a desk and sort of said, right, you go here, you go there, you do this, you do that. And everything was paper-based. Everything was paper-based, like carbon copy sheets of paper everywhere. And I had to fax those off at the end of every day. Yeah, we're talking like 2010 here, man. Like that's a decade ago. But it's still a million miles away from where we should have been. And someone said, I've got a great idea. Right, what we're going to do, we're going to digitize this process. What are we going to do? Right, we're going to put it in Excel. Oh, great. What's that going to look like? We're going to take exactly that sheet of paper and we're going to put it on the screen. And it's going to look exactly the same as it always has done. And you're like, this is dumb. This is crazy. And what do we do with it? Oh, we save it. Okay, right. And what happens? Oh, someone prints it out. And it was like, I see what you're saying here. This is nuts. So I came along and went, right, I'm gonna figure this out. So it was a case of initially it was build a better mousetrap, right? So I started building a better mousetrap, and then it was no good. So I slowly taught myself VBA, and I read VBA for Dummies, and I did Rhonda Bruin's thing where like I combined all the files at the end of the day and spat out a report. And I was basically 36,000 lines of VBA later, I'd built this system that automated that whole process, right? And like live recorded all the information, spat it out and did all this crazy stuff, right? And I was really frustrated because I'd realized that I'd completely done the most stupid thing in the world, that like buses move up and down the road, and where are we? We're stuck in an office. How do I take that and put that on a laptop? And I can't. I put it on a tablet. I can't. Right? I'm locked. So a friend of mine said, "Hey, look, have you tried Forms, Microsoft Forms?" And I went, "Yeah, man, this looks cool. Like I can do a whole bunch of stuff with this." but it didn't do context sensitive drop downs. And I really needed very intelligent context sensitive drop downs. It just didn't do it. 36,000 lines of VBA flow Performance Pro ain't going to do. So I just clicked on Power Apps, and I thought, this looks really difficult, and I closed it, and I came back a week later and I gave it another go, and the rest is history. I took an app that was one of the templates, which I think was the site inspection one, because it did a photo, and I really wanted to like do a photo and kind of take a photo and have it right to a data source somewhere. And I did that, and I built that. I think that was on SharePoint, and I started building apps, and people started going, "Oh, this looks fun." And then I made a really big discovery that there was this thing called the Common Data Service.
Right.
And that was like, I tried to learn Python. So in between VBA and Power Apps, I'd gone off and I'd like done a Team Treehouse course, and I'd done all this learning, and I was like, man, this is tough, and I've got three kids.
Seems like Keith is flexing here, but go ahead.
Yeah, like, no, but seriously, like I sat down and tried to learn that stuff, right? And my wife is, I never forget, I'm like lying on the sofa, laptop on the tummy, headphones in every night for about a month. And I had 2 kids, about to be 3, and I realized that I just missed the whole thing. Like, I'd been there for a year and I'd not achieved anything. Like, I hadn't released one app. I hadn't done, and in Power Apps, like in a week, I built my app, and then in a day, I built my app, and then it got shorter and shorter, and then the apps got more and more complex, and the timelines went up again. Like, I got my kids back a bit, not so much now because I'm busy again, but it really changed my life, and it meant that I could build the apps I've always wanted to build. Like, I started off I did a multimedia class in college in the 90s.
Sure.
And there was a thing called Director and Authorware, and that was very click and drag and drop, exactly like we are in today. And when I came to 2013, 14, when that started happening with VBA, there wasn't that thing there for business applications. Like, I was like, well, why can't I put a form and connect it to my data? This is stupid. Like, this needs to be like, I know what I need to make, and I don't want to pay 100 grand for it to be made. And the company hasn't got that money, so we just put it together. And
so real quick, now a couple of things. So again, friends watching on LinkedIn, on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, feel free to pop in your question. We'll get to your question, or folks who just joined Teams with us. Laura, thank you for joining. If you don't mind turning on your camera, I'm going to go to you next here. But Keith, we have a question that just came in from LinkedIn. When would you use the Common Data Service over a SharePoint list for storage? Anybody who wants to take that?
Okay, so the Common Data Service is 2 different things now. Now you've got DataFlex and DataFlex Pro, right? So DataFlex being the Teams-only version of the Common Data Service. It's got some limitations, got some storage limitations. The CDS makes better Power Apps, right? There, I said it. That's not saying that SharePoint makes bad Power Apps, but I can write a very complicated filter as a view in the Common Data Service that I could never write in SharePoint, right? I have the idea of a relational database. I have referential integrity. I have all this really powerful stuff backing me up in the CDS, whereas in SharePoint, I just don't have that. I also have a far more, especially in DataFlex Pro, Common Data Service, a very in-depth and detailed security model that SharePoint doesn't have. Can't hold a candle to the security model in CDS. That's not saying that SharePoint isn't secure, because it is. But what I mean is, if I want my team to view a record, and I want the manager of that team to view a record, and only the manager of that team to view a record, and my team, I can set that up in a really straightforward fashion. It's just, straightforward-ish fashion, Shane. I mean, come on, it's never straightforward, but it's straightforward-ish. But in SharePoint, it's always going to be a lot more difficult to do that. But for me, it's the ease and the speed with which I can build those apps in CDS versus the ease in which I can build those apps in SharePoint. For example, I can't filter by a date with SharePoint. I have to do all of this ISO date field manipulation for that to work in SharePoint. But with CDS, it's just boom, works out the box.
Now, so Shane talked about process. Obviously, Keith unpacked more on that. So, Mary, let me ask you, what type of advanced business automation solutions have you built for your customer or your colleagues using the Power Platform? Can you walk through an example, like as Shane was saying, like a before and after? You know, we use Excel, it's so manual, now we've automated. Can you kind of paint a picture of what that looks like and the effort that it took for you?
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind is kind of my first one that I built last year, coming out of an app in a day class and saying, okay, I can really use this in other places. So I built a commission calculator, which is nothing fancy or anything like that, but with the system that my client was using, the commission calculator was really straightforward. It's like, here's your person, here's the calculation that they get, and that's it. Well, the particular requirements of this was based off of a ship to location. So I went ahead and so depending on where it shipped to, they had a different, percentage. So that was outside of what they could do inside of the system. So I went ahead and created this app where I had basically, like Keith was talking about, I created an Excel lookup so that it had a table that showed the different percentages based on the zip code and then the salesperson associated with that. Then my app, what it would do is I pulled the API call from Business Central so that whenever the sales invoice posted, because you're not going to pay somebody, right, the commission before they get that, applied, or before the invoice is done. So that was a good trigger point. So then based off of that, what I did is, so we were talking about essentially it's Excel. And so I had the list of all of your invoices, and then the user was able to go in and say, okay, now it's time to pay my commissions or calculate the commissions for my salespeople. And you could look at the invoice and click over to that and then hit a calculate button. And it automatically said, okay, based off of the ship to, right? Because I was able to pull off the data entity, the exact fields that I needed. And so it was the dollar amount and the ship to and the salesperson were some of my key points. So so it calculated the commission off of that. And then off of lots of Shane videos, I was able to figure out how to essentially copy that data from, because I put it into, essentially it was a table, right? And then copy that back into Business Central, because Business Central has this Excel add-in approach where basically people are always in accounting processes and business processes, people are always using Excel. And then the system has, okay, you can take a table or a journal entry outside of the system and put it into Excel and then load that back in. So I said, aha, if I can patch this, then I can take the copy, you know what I mean? I can copy it out of my little app here and copy it back into this add-in, and then essentially becomes a pending general journal. So a lot of this work, in my previous, I've only been in consulting for a couple of years. And before that, I did a lot of different manufacturing and operational jobs. And, there's always this contention point of getting your commission paid and getting your salespeople paid. When you mess with somebody's money, you really start to, accounting teams and sales teams are never, they're always kind of fighting over some of those things. And this really was able to take away that, any questions, and also the work involved for the accounting team, right? Because they've got month-end closing processes and all these other things that to them are really more important, because they have these, deadlines compared to sometimes that commission or the commissions. So it really kind of made your salespeople and your accounting team friends, and automated the process and made everything really quick and just took a lot of the work out of it. So that was a really helpful one that my client, was able to use. So.
And that's what I love about Power Platform. I mean, think about business outcomes, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. Technology's great. We've got all the other wonderful, but clearly for something like this, not only can you quickly build a business solution, but it's really focused on addressing a very specific need, just like this, calculating commissions, right?
Right.
Call it digital transformation made manifest, right? Yes, so right. I went through a whole digital transformation thing at the business I was at, and I remember reading a survey that said, what has changed now we've rolled out Office 365? And it said Excel's green and Outlook's blue, right? That was the difference. Move from 2010 to 2016 was that.
Yeah.
And the problem is that there's just too many damn buttons in those applications. What I needed was an application with just the buttons that I need to press to do my job, right? Now, largely that's part of the Biz Apps platform, but Power Apps is what that thing is. I put the button I put on the screen does a very specific task in a very specific order in a very specific place, and that's massively revolutionary.
Yeah. So Laura, welcome first of all. Make sure you introduce yourself. You do a lot of training around Power Platform, Power Apps, and maybe you can share some of the most common questions people ask as they get started, and what kind of solutions people are trying to build.
Sure, I get a lot of people coming from the old technologies like InfoPath and SharePoint Designer and wanting to know how to translate what they used to do to the new way, and just a lot of old common ways and business solutions people would do, and it seems like people want to just have a quick little, well, you just take your InfoPath form and then you flip this button, or you do just one little quick setting, and this setting used to be called this and now it's this. Well, it's not. What I suggest is usually just learning the new platform, learning Flow and learning Power Apps and learning just how they work, because all those just old ways we used to do things are done in a completely different way in the new technology, and it's not something where you can just flip a switch and have, and translate one setting to an old one. Another, and just some of these really common things I know Shane and all of you do videos on, is things like repeating tables and things like cascading drop downs. And also a really common one is approval processes, and kind of what you all were talking about a second ago is just people are presented with so many buttons and so many things that they could possibly click on. So a very common thing that I build is approval processes in Power Apps, and I like to keep it in Power Apps. I know that Flow, Power Automate has this cool little approvals thing, and it's really great for routing documents around for approvals. But when it comes to building Power Apps, I like to have, somebody filled out a form, and somebody needs to approve it, and when they get that form to approve, they're opening the form, they're looking at the form. It's very simple. You only give them approve and reject buttons, and they don't have this big overwhelming like, oh, I didn't get training on this, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this form. It's just you. And that way, when you build a Power App, you can simplify it. You can decide what buttons they have and what they don't. So it makes it actually, I think the adoption's much higher for rolling out these applications to the business, because you're simplifying their life and you're making it so that they don't have too many choices. And again, approval processes are very common. And so when you're building these, it's up to you. It's your blank canvas. Just only provide what you want people to be doing at that time.
Yeah, Laura, I was going to say real quick, Laura said something really important as she got started, like starting with a clean slate. So it reminds me back in the day of SharePoint, like, hey, can you take my my file share that's 14 folders deep and replicate that in a document library, right? And we're seeing that today. Yeah, InfoPath, or even, God forbid, Access. And there's still people using Access, and they want to replicate Access directly into Power Apps. I go, no, please don't. Shane.
I was just going to piggyback on what Laura said, right? It was one of the things that I challenge myself and my team when we build apps is it shouldn't need training, right? If you need an 8-hour training course to work in my app, I've built you a crappy app. You should be making an app that is just, I like to go the Hulk smash mentality, right? Hulk smash. There's just kind of, I have a button to smash to do my thing, and there's no pick a path. It's not one of those Banderdash movies. It's a Hulk smash. And I think that's a great mentality instead of let's recreate paper where I'm like, I can do anything I want. Your users don't want to do anything they want. They want a Hulk smash.
But I think what's really powerful is, like, I keep seeing this happening as well. So you get your Hulk smash button, but next to the Hulk smash button is a little eye with a circle around it, and you click on that, and it brings up some context sensitive help that accurately describes the business process and how it's supposed to be done. That's really game changing, right? Because you're now building an app that's training. Exactly. You can build all that in.
All right. So here's a question that I got from somewhere, from some social media channel. So, okay, this is great, but the flip side, right? What if everybody feels so excited and empowered to start building their apps left and right, right? So how do you get a handle on that. That's
let them ducks.
Yes.
You got to go down the Intel path here and let chaos reign and reign in chaos, right? So right from the very get-go, some people at Microsoft, two wonderful human beings, Mehdi Andalus and Denise Moran, they came at this and they said, do you know what, we're in trouble here, because all of the people, they work on a customer success team, right? And they're sitting there going, all of our customer success people we're working with are telling us the same damn thing. IT just wants to shut this thing down. They need to know how many apps they've got. They've got all these environments. They've got these flows. There's stuff everywhere. It's like, how do I turn it off? And we said, well, what if you could control it? What if I could give you that granular control, right? So they invented this thing called the Center of Excellence Toolkit, right? Which is a really good starter. It's not the solution. It's a starter for building out Power Platform governance, right? And it just goes and captures where all your apps are, puts it all in one place, goes and captures all your flows, puts them in one place, all your users, your makers, your environments, puts them in one central source. And then you can start building your governance around that. So like, okay, so why don't we do governance proactively? Why don't we say that let's create a strong set of digital guardrails and data stewards, right? And we'll say that, like, when Mary makes her first Power App, it's going to point to Laura and say, hey, Laura's made 5 Power Apps in the same department as you. Laura's your mentor locally. And Shane's made like bazillions of Power Apps. He's like the champion of Power Apps for our business. So if you really get stuck, ask Shane, and let's throw them all in a Yammer group and like build on that. And the IT department, all they need is a button to click and say, like, has this app gone through the stage-gated process to be released to the world? And all you're doing there is you're just making a Power Apps. So it's a really meta experience using Power Apps Flow, Common Data Service, and Power BI to govern the platform itself, right? What was really crazy, I did the first time I think we'd run App in a Day in the UK, sorry, Admin in a Day in the UK with Andrew Welch and Manuela. We ran that and we were riffing with the people who had turned up, and what the penny dropped at the end of the day. There's this dude sitting there. I'll never forget. He was like, "Hang on a minute, I can use this for more than Power Platform governance, can't I?" It's like, I could govern my like user requests, my joiners, movers, leavers for creating accounts in Azure. I could trigger off this PowerShell script, and I can do this. And he's like, oh my God, I'm going to be able to build the service desk I've always wanted and dreamed of with Power Platform and have a rich data model backing it up with security and actions. And it was completely transformative. So when you get into this, like, oh my God, Power Apps, loads of flows, stop a minute, grab the Center of Excellence Toolkit, have a look at something called the Power Platform AF, the adoption framework, which a bunch of us in the community have written, including Manuela, and just have a little look through it and have a read through and like transform your business, but allow the users who have got the problem to fix the damn problem, and you're there to support them. So I say to the IT managers, what's this going to do for you? It's going to make you successful, because you've got this backlog over here and you're keeping the lights on over here and your budget's this big and you need a budget this big, and this is going to do that for you.
I don't think this is any different than the other governance conversation that comes up, right? Be it Teams, be it SharePoint. Certainly Power Platform, some may say it's much more riskier because now you can pull internal data and push it out externally. What's your thought on that, Shane?
Well, so I always remind people, that you can't do anything with the Power Platform you can't do today. It does not all of a sudden circumvent your security. Your users today can go to your SharePoint site, download all the documents, and post them on Twitter, right? All Power Platform does is allows them to do that in a more faster. I don't know. They can do it more efficiently, so they can steal your data faster, maybe. But it's not about letting them circumvent your security. All the same security is still in place, so you can't fear, just because you've given them a platform to do it better, that they're all of a sudden going to start breaking the rules they could have broken already. So that's been my answer to the whole security paradigm of Power Platform is evil. And
people have said that about SharePoint too. When they were going from file shares to SharePoint, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm scared though. The files are in SharePoint, everybody can see them, but it's the same permissions. Like they can do the exact same thing." Yeah.
And you got that guy with 15 pen drives on a key ring, and he's like, "This is my security right here."
But this highlights something, right? It's the fear of the unknown. I think one thing that's clear is Power Platform, especially to a lot of organizations, this is very new. And not knowing what it is, just at least at a high level, seeing the picture, oh, automation, oh, anybody can build an apps, the world is ending kind of thing. So you're exactly right. I think getting to know more of it, but more importantly, making people focus on business solutions versus just randomly connecting stuff, I think is the key.
Yeah, and to Keith's point, if I look at my customer base of like people we built apps for, 70% of them are not IT, right? It is the business users that are coming in like, hey, help me build my app, help me do my thing. And it goes all the way up. I probably have personally built apps for a dozen CEOs. And it's not like a CEO, like I heard like, oh, construction company CEO. I thought like a guy in a toolbox, right? This guy does $14 million a month in invoicing, right? He's a pretty big company CEO. But he's like, I'm tired of dealing with my own IT. So IT was holding up the big no sign, and he said, all right, cool, I'm gonna find these guys. He built his own app. So if you are in IT and you're listening to this, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna put the blocks on this, dude, it doesn't end well for you.
Mary,
No, don't scare him, Shane, because it does end well for him. Don't scare him too bad.
No, it doesn't end well if they do this number, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And but this can make them successful. That's the difference. Before, if they embrace it, and they wholeheartedly need to embrace it, man, because they're going to be told soon, do this thing, and it's much better to be said, hey, let's look at this, rather than to be told you will look at this.
I was telling some people about DataFlex the other day, this new thing, and immediately the first thing some server admins were talking about was, hey, how can I block that? Can I turn that off? Like, you haven't even tried it yet. It's just, that's the first thing that server admins think that they want to.
No, again, like so look at the DataFlex problem, right? So immediately when they announced DataFlex, I was like, yes, oh my God, this is just what I want. Oh, it's going to be tied to Teams, God. And it's like, I know that people haven't sorted Teams governance out yet. So like you need to sort out your Teams governance, because you're going to have to sort out your DataFlex governance at the same time. Because if you've got 500 teams, you're now potentially got 500 DataFlex instances. And like we saw from the very get-go when Teams sort of bubbled to the surface with Power Platform, what was the first thing we all built, Shane? An app to manage Teams, right? Everyone turned around and said, we want to turn Teams off. We think Teams is terrible. There's going to be sprawl, Teams sprawl. And we went, okay. We figured out there was some Graph API thing that allowed us to create a team and recorded who'd asked for it and all that kind of shenanigans. And that was like the most common Power App for about 6 months, right? And now it's like, look, this solved that problem. And now the lucky IT
teams are going to team.
Yeah, teams are going to team. Yeah, exactly. Teams want a team. It was just awesome.
So Mary, I want to go back to something you said earlier. So you talked about at least from some of the nonprofit work you do, you help educate a lot of folks, single parents, getting equipped with IT, especially Power Platform. So how's that process been like for those people who went through that? Are they excited, and how fast are they learning, and have they gotten opportunities as a result of learning Power Platform?
So we're still in the very early stages of that aspect. So I have a Power Platform user group that we're working to get off the ground. And where I am here in Columbia, South Carolina, I would say technology is not necessarily on the forefront. So it's a very slow process, and it's one of the main reasons why I'm trying to bring it, forward. And, I kind of have to start at the basics with some of the aspects that I'm doing, and have to make sure, like, we're starting really small and we're doing Excel apps first, right? Because it's like, if you can work Excel, then you can use an app. And it's trying to explain to them, in your normal business processes, like, a lot of times they'll feel intimidated. Like I was myself, I'm not in IT. I have zero technology background. I've got no business being in this Power App space, right? But I try to, encourage them that you're the best person to fix the problem that you're currently having. And, I think it was like Keith was mentioning this, the Excel spreadsheet that just passes around and goes like really crazy. And I'm like, whatever Excel spreadsheet that you hate and causes you the most grief and keeps you up at night, start there. And I kind of just help pinpoint it and not say you have to learn everything and you have to be the expert and you have to know all of the terminology and everything. You don't. Just start, I start really microscopic and say, what keeps you up at night? That's where we're going to start. And depending on that skill set, some of the areas, like we have to start with teaching them Excel. because I work with a women's transitional home. And so, you have these ladies that come from all different backgrounds. Maybe they have a college degree, maybe they don't have, a high school degree. And so you're going to have a really big variety of technology history in there. So it's really about, I try to meet the women and the people really right where they're at. So it's probably a much slower process than if you were just to go into a regular organization and teach an app in a day class, right? Because a lot of those people already understand those business classes or those business processes. So I'm trying to, say, okay, this is kind of what a business process is, or what, even if you're like a bartender, what do you hate the most, right? Maybe it's trying to figure out your inventory,
or
right?
Your tip.
And what?
Or your tip.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, how can you figure this stuff out? And it's kind of just saying that you can create a power app for anything. And this is what a business process is. And this is how you can slow it down. But really, my biggest point to them at the end of the day is nobody can fix your problem better than you. IT can't do it for you because they are too smart. They have this like higher level aspect of it. And it's why I love consulting, because I haven't been in it for years and years and years. I'm not the expert, per se on this process or this system. But what I am an expert at is being in your shoes and understanding those headaches. And because of that, I have, all the empathy in the world for this change and this process that you're going through. So let's work on that. So that's my like low level, non-tech, not fancy aspect to it. And that's really where I try to make my blogs and my videos and stuff, as well as it's like, hey, in layman's terms, this is what you do, And thing and thingy are my most favorite terminology to use to explain things.
Thingamajig, right? There you go. Well, again, folks, if you have some questions, feel free to drop it in. If you're in Teams, drop your questions or pipe in or social media. But in the time that we have, right, I just want to make sure we cover this too. Can all of you share one tip to get started with Power Platform? Very practical, make people do right now so they can test it out. And for those watching, if you're thinking, well, I don't really have Office 365, I don't know if I have access, you can access it for a limited time period too for free as well. So let's start with Laura. What's that one quick tip on how to get started with this?
Well, I think that you should wrap your head around the basics and start understanding Excel functions to understand Power Apps in order to be able to get a grasp of the logic involved. So to me, that first step isn't to just start throwing stuff in a Power App, but really kind of take the time to learn how the functions work and how the controls, how their properties work and talk to each other. So because that really saves a lot of time. Once you know that, then you're not going to be spinning your wheels, Googling every single thing that you need to figure out.
And Laura, you do tons of training on this, right? For folks that are interested, where can they go to learn from you?
iwmentor.com. I teach SharePoint, Power Apps, and Power Automate live online and self-paced.
All right. Thank you. All right, Keith, what's that one tip for folks to get started?
Yeah, get a use case. Get a use case by far. Like we're teaching a dude, said like 3 weeks. I've gone through all the training material and I just don't feel like I'm getting it. And I said, well, what are you building? Oh, no, I'm just going through the material. I was like, you need to build something, dude. You need to build something. And it was he ended up building a little fitness app for himself, emailed me back, said, I've learned more in the last 4 hours than I learned in 3 weeks because I had a problem. I knew how to Google. I watched some Shane's videos. I watched some of Laura's videos. Didn't watch mine because I'm a rubbish. And that's other guy called Daniel who knows about him. But like, it was a case of, he went off, watched some videos, came back, figured it out. So make sure you have a problem you're trying to solve. Like number one thing.
Got it. Awesome. Shane?
Wow, well, this is really not a fun game to go third in. I really feel bad for Mary. So, I mean, I think that you've seen the right progression, right? Laura, hey, you got to understand some fundamentals. Keith, you got to go build something, right? That was my second one. So I guess my third one is, Keith kind of used it, but I'm going to steal it. He didn't explicitly say it, is go learn from someone else, right? So today in the Power Platform, I would say that 90-something% of the people learn by going out to YouTube and typing in Power Apps, send an email, Power Apps, repeating tables, Power Apps, whatever the topic might be that you are, Power Apps timesheet. Go out there and watch a video. There is so many awesome community contributors that are just making things, doing videos. And what's funny is, it's real easy to be like, hey, you guys are all in competition, right? I mean, Laura's IW Mentor and my training.powerapps911.com, they are one-for-one enemies, right? But Laura and I have been friends for about 1 million years. And, and it's when you go watch videos, there's probably 100 people that have made the same video on sending an email. And it's easy to be like, oh man, they all must hate each other. No, we all look at it as we all say the same stuff in theory, but we all say it differently. And, the way that it comes out of my mouth might not make sense to you, but when Keith throws in the word rubbish and some doogly dangs or something like that, it might make more sense. Or Laura, how she pleasantly says it instead of screaming at you like I've been known to do. So there's so many different ways to consume very similar content, but it's because everyone has a different voice and how they got here, like Mary, right? Completely different path than Laura or Keith or myself. We all have different paths, so we all have different voices. So if you don't like the way that the person you're watching says it, go to the next video. The next person's going to teach you the same concept. They got a different style.
No, I love that whole point, right? The Power Platform community is just amazing. For folks not familiar, just go to Twitter or go to LinkedIn or just go online. Look for, Power Platform community, Power Addicts, Less Code, More Power. And Microsoft is actually amazing in how supportive Microsoft is too. You've got Donna Sarkar, you got Heather Newman, you got John Levesque, you got a lot of wonderful people backing up this community worldwide. Okay, Mary, what's your one tip for folks to get started on this?
Okay, and I may be stating the really obvious here, but I'm going to piggyback a couple different things here. I would say get a developer environment. Go ahead and download your developer environment so that a lot of times people are like, okay, well, that's great, but where do I get started? What do I do? Get it, it's free. You can, for like a 30-day trial, you can do that. But what I did as well, and there's a really great video on if you're wondering, how do I get that? If you're going down that basic and you're like, how do I even get that? There's a really great YouTube video that I can share. Somebody put one there, yeah. And if Chris Huntingford makes a really amazing video that walks you through exactly how to spin up this trial environment. So I would suggest, kind of starting there, and as well, I would suggest, if you're really into it, invest in yourself a little bit, not by much, you can. I still have my on Microsoft.com, environment that I started off a little over a year and a half ago. And I think I pay maybe $15 or $30 a month to continue so that I can just play whenever I want to play. And, so I would suggest that as well. A lot of times oh, this is out after a couple months. Well, yeah, but I mean, maybe not to everyone, but if you can afford the $15 a month, I definitely say, or $15, $30, however many users you're going to have, I would definitely say to invest in yourself and allow yourself that.
Yeah, I mean, that's how many Starbucks coffee, right? Or in Keith's case, maybe that's 3 drinks in the pub. So, 1 second. Can you guys hear me? I just lost audio here.
We can hear you, dude.
Okay, got it.
You were just in shock that Keith didn't go on a 5-minute diatribe about all the things he was eating, right?
I know. But anyway, so folks, this has been an awesome conversation. I hope our friends watching got a lot out of it, but definitely check Power Platform out now. I've dropped in some resources and links on social. And make sure, by the way, speaking of Power Platform and learning, this Wednesday and Thursday, I'm hosting a free Teams 101 training. No sign up. We'll broadcast it on LinkedIn. I'll talk about how you hook up Teams with Power Apps and Power Automate as well on Thursday. So make sure you all join that and invite your colleagues. So with that, again, I'm so grateful for having all of you join our Office 365 hours today as we start August. And I'm sure if you have any questions, Shane, Keith, Laura, and Mary would be happy to help out. And you can definitely track them down online. So with that, thanks everybody. Until the next episode, be safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, take care. Bye.